we've also seen, and Putin referred to this, the uh, removal of statues, of Soviet statues, the removal of Lenin statues, but also the naming of streets, naming them after commanders of the OUNB and the UAP, these partisan forces that allied with the Nazi Germany occupiers of Ukraine. Um, it's been particularly Stepan Bandera, who is sort of the nationalist hero of the forces that are essentially on the border of Donbass right now. And in fact, I believe that the road that leads to Baba Yar was named Stefan Bandera Avenue, which is just absolutely shocking, that the site of one of the worst pogroms, where Jews were simply herded into a field, shot, and then thrown in mass graves, that this was named for a Nazi collaborator is just absolutely shocking. And this is the reality, along with the, the observances, the official observances of, honoring these war criminals, characters dressed up in UAP and OUNB garb,
And
carrying out
German SS
ceremonies
Nazi
with
uniforms. They have funerals for these Ukrops that get killed in battle, and the guys that are carrying their coffins are wearing Nazi uniforms, dude. The eagle and the swastika, the steel helmet, the Mausers, the whole dress up. It looks like Henry Gibson right there.
this is a definite social misfit. He could have been in the Blues Brothers, and is actually honoring the I believe the Galician SS. This is a march in Kiev on April 28th, honoring the SS Galician Brigade. So this is the kind of, I mean, I could just show endless footage. I think everyone watching this has seen the footage from Ukraine, from Kiev in particular, just open displays of Nazism. We've covered it at the Gray Zone, the arming of the Azov Battalion, which is openly Nazi, whose fighters wear SS badges. Uh, the training of this battalion by Canadian military officers. I mean, essentially,
U.S.
the as
Special Forces, British SAS.
right, they are, technically a minority in Ukraine, but as an ideological and military force, they play a dominant role. They've been incorporated into the National Guard. They have a national corps that operates openly in Kiev.
The neo-Nazi group C-14 and Kiev city government signed an agreement allowing C-14 to establish a municipal guard to patrol the streets. 3 such militia-run guard forces are already registered in Kiev, and at least 21 operate in other cities.
They're able to intimidate Ukrainian citizens. They've attacked the Ukrainian gay pride parade repeatedly, basically preventing it from taking place. They've attacked human rights activists. So they're terrorizing the Ukrainian population as well. And they essentially have veto power over decisions by the Ukrainian president and his office. And what we've seen essentially is the privatization of the Ukrainian military. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the units that are in the field, particularly in the east, are militias. They are not actually part of the Ukraine, and they have their own ideology. Most of it is nationalist. They're kind of exempt from any human rights rules imposed by the EU or whoever on Ukraine, and it's just this kind of free for all.
Well, it's not the majority, but it is a very significant minority. And these volunteer battalions, the Azov, the other guys, the oligarch-backed units, these are the guys with, the best equipment, night vision devices, encrypted radios, high-level optics on their sniper rifles. And these are the guys, and then the rest of them, the regular Ukrainian army is a bunch of dudes with, AK-47s that have had the barrels shot out 100,000 rounds ago, from the 1960s or something, and, they don't even have good boots, much less good food or stuff like that. So the military power of the genuine neo-Nazi battalions is much more. It's much greater than their numerical numbers would indicate.
Right, and let's just see some more footage of what Azov does inside Ukraine. This is a official Azov battalion pogrom against civilians. You can see that they're spray painting homes and cars of people who disagree with them. You have the Wolf's Angel logo in the upper right hand corner, which is the official logo of the Azov battalion. This is at a time when Congress was refusing to block aid and arms to the Ukrainian military, but specifically to the Azov battalion, which had been incorporated into the National Guard. Here they're setting fire to a home, setting someone's front yard on fire. I mean, these are just thugs and hooligans.
That reminds me of Odessa right there, bro.
Yeah, and talk about what happened in Odessa in 2014, because this speaks to the assaults on the Russian-speaking population inside Ukraine.
Well, on the 2nd of May, 2014, a group of loyal Ukrainian citizens gathered together to peacefully protest against the coup d'etat, the foreign occupation of their country, the dismissal, the threat of death that made their elected president flee the country. And the U.S. CIA, Joe Biden, had already given these UCROPs the order, we have to squash completely these protests. We have to terrorize these people so they won't even dare to dream of coming out to protest against, the crime that we just committed.
Ukraine, 2018. The country endures a real economic crisis. Nowadays, it is the second poorest country in Europe. Law enforcing bodies are impotent. Political groups and movements set up special battalions of their own. Some call them voluntary, others brand them as nationalistic. Nevertheless, tell us, the army is subordinate to the authorities, isn't it? There's government, and the army is subordinate to the authorities, and who are these battalions subordinate to?
The same authorities, all the battalions created in Ukraine, whether it is right sector or any other unit, according to the law they had been created, all these divisions are formed to defend the country, either in the form of public interest protection in the capital or hostilities on the front line. Anyway, that is aimed at defending the state.
Right sector organization declared itself in the first days of Revolution of Dignity. Right sector incorporated such organizations as Trident, named after Bandery, Patriot of Ukraine, White Hammer, Karpat Sech, and other ultra-right groups of Ukrainian nationalists.
People's Deputy of Ukraine. They neither shoot nor attack. They are just a phenomenon, a disease one has to pass through. In addition, those people are not necessarily bad. I am not saying they are bad. It is a matter of legal form and states' degree to control it.
The news concerning aggressive attacks, plunders, and murders became daily. People are either frightened or they're being fed with the slogans of national grandeur. This country is leading a civil war. It all started 4 years ago in Maidan. Back then, people dreamed of something different. The cause that sent people to Maidan is humanly comprehensible: anger at the administration of Yanukovych, corruption, and desire to be a part of a free and civilized Europe. All of this they were promised by the then president, but he did not keep his promise. People came out to the square. Few will not sympathize with unarmed citizens who stand for their freedom and self-identification.
It was raining that day, yet people came there, which meant that they were really bothered. It was not a hunger riot, nor was it a riot against the government or the president. There were no slogans calling for someone's resignation or displacement or for making some revolution. There was sort of a simple request from people. We wished for that, so give it to us. Well, you kind of promised that. I'd say more. That was an obvious and clear message that we were moving in that direction, that we wanted something different. That is what played a big part, as I think. What happened next was, of course, a fever pitch rolling from there on.
The whole world was mesmerized by the several months of confrontation between the rallying people and the law-enforcing bodies. Yet the revolution of dignity ended on February 20th, 2014, by mass murder.
They shoot at people from a Kalashnikov rifle. These are firearms.
More than 100 people were killed, hundreds were wounded. At the end, Yanukovych left the country. Heroes of the revolution got their hands on power.
Get out, you don't respect me. Easy, easy, he is a journalist.
Still, nobody knows for sure who was shooting at people on Maidan. In order to get to the answers, our team arrived in Yerevan. Here we met with 3 former military men who witnessed the events on Maidan. They decided to speak now because they are afraid for their lives. More and more witnesses of that bloody shooting down perish. At least 6 former comrades of these military men have already been killed. Alexander Grigalashvili, Georgi Janelidze, Georgi Saralidze, Mirab Kipiani, David Sikharulidze, Kotelashkia. Their cases are not being investigated.
If something happens to me or those guys who have given these interviews, the responsibility for this will rest with Saakashvili and Mamulashvili.
Mikhail Saakashvili, excluded from his own country, former president of Georgia. New authorities of Ukraine showed their gratitude to Saakashvili by giving him Ukrainian citizenship and the position of governor of Odessa region. He did not hesitate to appoint his people to such key posts as the seaport, the customs, the police, and the prosecutor's office.
In January, they invited me to their office in that free zone again. He said that Ukrainian riots had erupted, that people organized rallies and protests. Well, he told that we had to fly to Kyiv to help our brothers as they went out to those riots. He had already mentioned a well-paid job, so he gave us $1,000 per head up front and promised $5,000 more at the end of the trip.
Georgy Orbejo used to work in the personal guard of the Minister of Defense Georgy Abaramidze. He fought in Afghanistan and Iraq. He served as a commander of rare self-defense. His military rank was major.
After some time, Mamuka calls me and suggests having a meeting. He asks me whether I can gather a group of my Georgian comrades. We fought together with.
In 1991, Cesari joined National Guard of Zviad Gamsahurdia and served in his personal operational guard.
I once met Georgi Bezhetashvili. He is my friend, and we have known each other since the war in Abkhazia, as we fought together. He came up to me and said that Mamuka Mamulashvili was gathering military men to support people of Maidan in Ukraine, so to speak. Well, and that we would be paid money for that.
Mamuka Mamulashvili is the military advisor to the former Georgian president Mikhail Saakashvili. He is the organizer of Zonderkommando and special forces units of particular cruelty and free front groupings. Inside the Ukrainian army, he formed a national Georgian Legion and took several industrial enterprises in Kiev under his control.
We met with Mamulashvili. He told that we had to take 2 passport-size photographs and give our own passports to him. It was around December. We did not pass through any border controls and any checking in. We were just put on a minibus, taken to the airport, and put on the plane. We took our seats, and he gave out the passports. As I felt curious, I just took my passport and looked through. My name and second name were David Gegichko, and the rest of data in the passport was mine. I mean, the year of birth, the place of birth were all mine there. When I met Mamuka, I handed over the photographs of our people, and he gave me money in an envelope. He told me that as soon as we finish our job, all our data would be deleted from the computer. You know, when you are given such a task, you regard everything with suspicion.
Beja had a lot of experience in such matters. He practiced in special battalions under the leadership of Mamulashvili from 2011 to 2013. They were taught sniper skills, hand-to-hand combat, and detention of people.
Only afterwards, after a while, did I find out that the man who had met us at the airport was Parubi.
Andrei Parubi was Maidan commandant and chief of Maidan defense. Today, he is the speaker of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine.
When we came out on Maidan, tents had been already set up. Mamuka and Parubi met us there. We were explained that our duty at that stage was to observe the situation. They told us that some Jean was Parubi's right-hand man. Therefore, if he needed something or there was an additional task, this man would come up to us and we would have to obey him. I was like an internal security service. I checked all the tents, I stopped and checked people, and I was in charge of internal security and the so-called external intelligence.
Wasn't there a Georgian tent there?
There were Georgian tents there, but I saw neither fighters of Mamuka nor anybody else.
Soldier of Revolution Jean is in fact a Kiev resident Yevgeny Yeremenko. He used to be an officer of security service of Ukraine in the past. Later on, he formed his own security company. During the events of Maidan, he organized the protest self-defense. It included the so-called Sotnyas, hundreds, of veterans of special services, participants in the Afghan, Iraq, and Chechnya wars. There were also young people and volunteers there. Right Sector and Maidan self-defense worked together. Jean is proud to have been the right-hand man of Maidan commandant Andrei Parubi.
We had the headquarters for signing up into the self-defense. Well, there were billboards too. They were conducted interviews in order to understand their ideas and reasons to be there. I selected fit and athletic guys to my team, as it was a power sotnya. It was all the same for me. We would stand tall, fight, throw stones, and defend ourselves against Berkut to prevent them from taking our positions. Banditry of that kind was actively used and infiltrated Maidan. They were camouflaged as different Sotnya units, and these Sotnya commanders that you are mentioning, each of them must be investigated, who and what he is, where he appeared from, and what he did on Maidan, but it is impossible.
Why it is impossible to investigate the activities of those revolutionists during the Maidan events, we will learn a little later. In the meantime, our team is coming back to Yerevan to hear the version of Georgian fighters. Those who came to help the soldiers of the revolution, those who were met by Maidan commandant Andrei Poruby in Kiev, according to their words.
Была конкретная задача там стояла. Там не просто, как многие зеваки были, что пришли,
There was a
там,
specific task,
покричали
not
и
to just shout in sort of support like many other onlookers did, but to throw stones and make Molotov cocktails. He had to be an anger trigger for those police or militia, whatever they call
у
them.
них называлось. Вот, их выводить из себя.
Exactly. There were stones, metallic items, chains as well, and batons. There were fights, some people who hit their heads, and some who needed to be urgently got out of there. That's what I call the assistance.
Well, it all had to be done as provocation.
Yes, sure. We call it both provocation and help. We had to make this process last longer. There was provocation carried out on our part, and we helped the rallying people to do it as well.
На Майдане было очень много людей, которые пришли по зову сердца.
There were many people on Maidan who came there led with their hearts, but they turned out to be easily manipulated. When a group of people is going to assault, and they are all equipped with helmets, masks, bulletproof jackets, and other protection means, carrying Molotov cocktails, batons, sidearms, there is one man among them who has firearms and wages fire.
И ведет огонь.
In this case, the law is clear and simple. A police officer has the right to use a weapon in case there is a threat to his life, the life of his colleagues, and the people around. The case of 5 members of Kiev's special unit Berkut is being heard in Svetoshinsky district court of Kiev. They have been charged with the shooting down of 48 activists in Maidan. These former law enforcers have been in custody for more than 3 years. Many consider this to be a frame-up, while others are waiting for the exemplary punishment of the so-called murderers.
That's a good question why we are here. I dare say it's a political decision of a government by a single person. There was a different approach at each stage, but still the line was the same. It aimed to protect this coup. We are going to punish only those people who were defending in private capacity, as well as protection of the constitutional system. As for those who led to this, well, they are all the highest level now. What kind of a career? What are you talking about? Our chances to stay alive were next to nothing. How can you think of a political career if you are going to be killed tomorrow? Listen, the idea of that is ridiculous. We came out to perish.
After Maidan, Sergei Pashinsky became acting head of presidential administration. Then, after parliamentary election, he was assigned head of Committee of Defense and National Security. He also became the head of Supervisory Council of Ukroboronprom. This association of enterprises deals with arms trade. It is such a lucrative appointment in the context of the war in the Donbas region.
We have rebuilt our army. We have almost recreated our military-industrial complex, though it still needs a lot of work. We set off a cruise missile yesterday. Make no mistake about it. There are only 7 countries which own technologies on cruise missiles. We have become the 7th country. We are developing tactical weapons. We are upgrading our aviation along with air defense.
Despite the achievements of Ukraine in self-arming to date, the case of mass shooting down of the participants in the rally and the members of Kiev's special unit Berkut remain unsolved.
Currently, we are not able to start investigation the way we see it. Why so? The fact is that the next day after the mass murder, a new law was adopted. It is unique for Ukraine and called on the prevention of persecution of participants in the rally, according to which it is forbidden to investigate activities of the revolutionaries at Maidan under pains and penalties of law. At a time when some are being accused, whereas the others are being excused for everything, it is way too hard to discover the truth. That is how it was supposed to be. Crime reports related to the murders and law enforcement bodies, along with the ones related to the murders of civilians, are supposed to be investigated and taken to court in joint trials.
Such a consensus is rarely found among advocates of the opposite sides. I'd say more, each party is claiming to have irrefutable evidence to support their cases. In Tbilisi, our team was able to see and capture the documents confirming the statements of Bijot, Cesari, and Alexander. These are electronic tickets with matching dates and names on them.
The former president was Yanukovych, wasn't he? On February 18, Mamuka told us that the former president had reached the agreement with the Europeans. He was going to enter into some negotiations related to early election so that the rally would stop. There would be no rally at all. Yet our aim was to make these protesting people stay. We never should have let the meeting break up. It was the very moment when no signature by Yanukovych could remove the demand of his resignation from people. They were thrilled. They perished. People were in such state when they couldn't stop. We were told to go, so we did. Afterwards, we found out that it was Ukraine Hotel. We went up to the third floor, entered a room. We were sitting there together, and I got acquainted with the Estonians. They were called Kolya 1 and Kolya 2 as a joke. The team leader, Mamuka, invited us to the meeting, and there was someone slim, not very tall like me, who came with Misha. He was an American, and his name was Brian, and he was introduced. I chuckled. Why it has to be Brian and not another name? It reminded me of the film called Brian Sergeant. We were explained that he was very good at his job. He was a sniper. He had been to hot spots in Afghanistan, Iraq. They told that he was a good guy helping us at the stage. People, they came in, well, you know, that Christopher Bryan entered, Pashinsky and some other guys. They brought 2 black bags. They carried them into the room and put down. Those bags contained guns, which turned out to be sniper rifles. 2 of them were made in Russia. One of them was a foreign rifle with a scope and a holder. They took the guns out. assembled, well, as I was a military man, I could tell if it's the first time when a person sees a gun, or he could assemble it with his eyes closed.
So they were quick and professional?
Well, then it was from bad to worse, and everything became clear. One of them started opening the window. The one in the corner was sighting his gun with slaughter. He took aim, made a few shots at intervals of 20 seconds, 15 seconds. Well, everything had already been clear and fallen into place.
So you witnessed the training?
Exactly. I was there in the room, and I could see everything. Pashinsky came back to us, and that was it. He told all of us to be quick and follow him. So he led us, and we followed him to the conservatory. Parasyuk came, and there were about 20 people with him. It was obvious they were going to the conservatory, and they finally did. All those 20 people carrying bags went to the conservatory, forming a group. People were coming and coming. Well, there were the Ukrainians. At least two of them were speaking Ukrainian. One was looking younger. His name was...
So you witnessed the training?
Exactly. I was there in the room, and I could see everything. Pashinsky came back to us, and that was it. He told all of us to be quick and follow him. So he led us, and we followed him to the conservatory. Parasyuk came, and there were about 20 people with him. It was obvious they were going to the conservatory, and they finally did. All those 20 people carrying bags went to the conservatory, forming a group. People were coming and coming. Well, there were the Ukrainians. At least two of them were speaking Ukrainian. One was looking younger. His name was Parasyuk. Is it going to be a program?
It is going to be a film about Maidan.
Okay, let it be a film. If I knew that the film is about Maidan, I wouldn't have come at all.
Vladimir Parasyuk became people's deputy after Maidan. Recently, he has declared that time was still not ripe for Ukrainian people to know the truth about Maidan.
Pashinsky was also armed with a gun. They started handing out weapons to those sitting next to us. That young guy was given a kind of automation called Saiga carbine. And it really happened, so that in the evening on February 18 in Kyiv, people were being beaten completely. Meanwhile, in the western Ukraine, rallying people occupied several police departments where weapons were guarded. Guns fell into their hands. It's true. Well, but what did you expect? There were tens of thousands of people on Maidan. I believe that some of them, well, you know, when one of you near and dear was killed, you have to choose between courses of action, either to duck and cover or to face your murderer. We looked him in the eye. When the rally was on, the snipers had to shoot protesting people. Berkut saw that the meeting did break. In order to cause chaos and rush, the rally had to remain and the government resigned. Those murders were absolutely not motivated, absolutely irrational. They have no causal link at all. I mean, according to the evidence of more than 200 victims whom we have heard in the court. In the first place, everybody was sleeping peacefully and not intending to attack. In the morning, well, at about 8, I was at the 4th floor looking out of the window. At the moment the shooting began, it started from side of the conservatory. All of a sudden, Pashinsky gave us a command to put ourselves in the position. All of us were asked what was wrong. All in all, it was a command to shoot at a target. It doesn't matter which target, he said. There were both Berkut and the Iranian people there. He said there was no difference. How does the sniper work? For example, I can't work from here when the window is open because I will give myself away. It's a square and it's impossible to make no one notice me. When you shoot, the gun makes a loud sound. You can be easily seen when there are two people by the window. One of them opens it and the other takes the post. He has to work from here. One of them shoots, the other shuts the window. The bullet exits, but there is no sound. The sound stays within. Nothing can be seen. Everything is closed. Sergei Pashinsky is the person who did not let Alpha Safety Group in on February 20th and enter the Ukraine hotel to check sniper points. There is growing volume of reliable evidence that there were snipers working in pairs, both in Ukraine hotel and Dnipro hotel, as well as other spots. They were throwing fire into rallying people and policemen.
Well, you're a commandant, right? Your duty is to protect me. Your people are being killed, and as you can hear over the radio, the shooting is coming from Ukraine hotel. As for me, if I were a commandant and my people were being killed, I ran in the direction of this Ukraine hotel, run upstairs, check everything.
No, you don't reach Ukraine hotel. You drop down dead because a sniper sets you off. A commander's mission is not to send his people and subordinates to death, but to protect them from being killed.
Olga Bogomolets is neither a commandant nor a soldier. She's a seventh-generation medical worker by vocation. Having learned about the morning's massacre, she ran to organize a makeshift hospital in front of bullets. It was not the first experience during the time of confrontation in Maidan. The hospital was located on the first floor of Ukraine Hotel. I took the bags with all necessary equipment, including dressing materials, pain meds, and first aid. They were leading me under cover of wooden shields up along Institutskaya and to Ukraine Hotel. Olga and other voluntary medical workers were desperate to save wounded people. The shoots were so severe and professional. They aimed and shot right at the frontal lobe, right at the heart and coronary arteries. We were waiting at the door with intubation trays, ready to intubate, put drips to people on a stretcher. However, the gunshot wounds were so deep that it was impossible to save their lives. The only participant in the events who declined to be interviewed was Maidan Commandant Andrei Parubiy. He had his own substantial grounds. Andrei Parubiy is indeed the second in line for the president in Ukraine. At the beginning of his political career, he used to be one of the founders of Social National Party of Ukraine. Parubiy's party borrowed the symbols of Division SS. Now remember Right Sector, Trident, named after Bandery, Patriot of Ukraine, and White Hammer. According to the investigation of mass murders on Maidan, Andrei Parubiy testified that there was a third force. What kind of force is it? What does the Speaker of Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine mean? Why does he refuse to answer that question? Well, you know, it sounds as if current authorities aren't interested in revealing the truth.
Well, I don't know the detailed motivation, but as a result of 4 years of investigation, they are extremely reluctant to help in the case. Answering the question why, one may form different opinions, including yours.
4 years later, people of Ukraine are still not aware of the truth. They are simply not told the truth. Free Ukrainian people don't demand it for unknown reasons.
Well, as for the Georgians, I have already agreed with my friends and colleagues to catch those liars. They were telling stories about how they shot down people at my command. It is possible that I will call you. My Jewish friends here in Kyiv told me that in Israel, those guys were going to be torn to pieces. If I ask to tear them to pieces in Israel, sure thing we will be in conflict for about 10 years.
After the murders on Maidan, Bejo and Alexander left Ukraine immediately. Since that time, they have been on the run. Georgian mercenaries who stayed in Kiev, like Cesari, didn't want to miss their money. But that required taking part in the provocations in Odessa, which caused a disaster that equaled the catastrophe on Maidan.
I met Mamulashvili later in the evening. I asked for my money to wash my hands of the affair. He said the money would be given by Saakashvili, and Saakashvili would get them from Poro. I told him that I knew neither Poro nor Saakashvili personally. You promised me, I said. Afterwards, I found out, being there for so much time, that the real name of Poro was Poroshenko.
Pyotr Poroshenko has been the president of Ukraine since 2014. Despite high levels of poverty in the first year alone of Poroshenko's rule, he had increased his incomes 7 times. He continued the war in Donbass, making substantial money in the process.
I saw Mamulashvili with that commandant.
And what was his name?
His name is Andrei.
And the surname?
Parubi. He told me the same again and again about that Poro, that Saakashvili, but he added that we would be given the money later. He said that mobile groups were being created around Ukraine. He explained everything clearly in a few words. He said that there would be going to be rallies everywhere, so the groups would be sent there in order to stop them.
On the 1st of May, Cesari, like other mercenaries, were put on 5 buses filled with sticks, bats, and Molotov cocktails. They were going to Odessa. Odessa is a city of more than 1 million people in the south of Ukraine. It is the major trade route of the country. Odessa is also a city with important cultural heritage, such as literature, folklore, special sense of humor, and even a peculiar dialect. It is a mixture of Russian, Ukrainian, and Yiddish language. After Crimea Peninsula became a part of Russia, Donetsk and Lugansk regions in the east of the country started an armed confrontation against new authorities. Ukraine couldn't put Odessa at the risk. Since the time of Maidan, the so-called anti-Maidan movement had been organized in the city and around the whole country.
As long as Russia is united, it is invincible.
It was the movement of those people who didn't fully agree with the position of independent Ukraine.
It was told that anti-Maidan is walking around Odessa. Our aim is to disperse them, to set fire to their tents. Well, in other words, to break, to torch them, call it whatever you like.
Ukrainian fans meet buses with such Cesaris in Odessa.
Death to the enemies.
They allegedly came here to watch a football match.
Guys of about 15, 16 years old, under 20 years old, approached the bus. Well, they were such teenagers.
Guys of Maidan are supported by local groups of right sector. At the same time, in the center of Odessa, local police forces are gathering together along with a few hundred of so-called pro-Russian agitators. Agitators on both sides are wearing red or yellow-blue bandages on their arms. It means know your people, know right from wrong.
We could see that there was another group of people moving towards us. Do you understand? And at this very moment, a fire engine came from the side street. There was a message. The Parubi had given a command to seizure this fire engine. In other words, to drive it ourselves to let it go forward.
Later, this incident will contribute to the victory of Maidan groupings, but become a link in the chain of tragic events. Six people perished in confrontations in the center of sunny Odessa. 2 of them were Maidan supporters and 4 were anti-Maidan people. Maidan supporters came out to the square. Some of the civilians took shelter in the trade union building.
That meant that they had been trapped. They had nowhere to go, you know. They could go nowhere but the building, you know. Otherwise, they would have to take part in the battle between those groups here. I saw a wounded person after the police had moved away. They remained inactive, by the way. They could stand together and block the way, but they were doing nothing.
Was the police there?
Yes, but the way they behaved, it was more like doing nothing. Armed policemen were standing there, holding shields and wearing hard hats and helmets. Like, you know, the only thing they did was blocking the street to prevent anti-Maidan supporters from entering it, as I could see.
Из того, что нами установлено, то действительно мы видим.
As we have noted, the actions of law enforcement bodies were inadequate. It was sort of a deliberate inaction, as they had plenty of opportunities to halt this possible confrontation in time, but they didn't.
Но они этого не сделали.
I can't say for sure whether they locked themselves or they were locked there. I don't know. Well, one thing I know, Parubi gave a command to break and burn everything on the way.
101.
Добрый день.
Здравствуйте.
В Куликовом поле пожар.
Ну, это горит на открытой территории.
Но скоро будет гореть здание.
Какое здание будет гореть скоро?
Около администрации.
Ну, горит пока еще на открытой территории, палатки сгорают, правильно? Пока ничему не угрожает.
And the fire started then?
The fire started, but there were no firemen at all.
101. Алло. Здравствуйте. Я тут проходила мимо Куликова, там подожгли. Там ничему не угрожает, там просто горят шины, ничего страшного там нет. 101.
Алло, здравствуйте, девушка. Дело в том, что на Куликовом поле уже горит здание профсоюзов ввиду известных событий.
Я поняла вас, хорошо.
Пожалуйста,
Я поняла, хорошо.
Потому что милиция ничего не делает. Да,
Поняла.
101.
101.
Пожарная?
Да.
Горит здание на Куликовом поле. Вы что, не в курсе? Почему никто не выезжает? Там подожгли все здания.
Сейчас будут.
Ну, конечно. Вы что, ждете, пока все сгорит?
Если бы своевременно приехали пожарные, опять же, этого и близко не было бы, но...
If the firemen came on time, but nothing of the kind had happened during 40 minutes, the commandant told them not to set off.
он дал указание не выезжать.
101.
Горит здание облсовпрофа. Почему вы не посылаете машину?
Потому что машины захватываются. 101.
Девушка, скажите, пожалуйста, там на Куликовом поле горит здание профсоюзов. Кто-то будет это принимать меры, блядь, этих ублюдков, сука, выгнать, а? Алло, добрый день,
101.
дом профсоюзов горит.
Я поняла вас хорошо, спасибо.
Немедленно, там уже пожар, что вы делаете? Люди внутри.
And this went on for about 2 hours. The fire was there, and people started to scream and come out of the windows, you know?
Took them 2 hours?
The fire was spreading inside the building.
101.
Девушка, вы не хотите приехать на Куликовое поле, а? Тут
Машины
горит
едут.
профсоюзное, уже там люди
Женщин.
внутри.
Женщина, сейчас будут, сейчас. Успокойтесь, сейчас
Ну
будут.
куда это, блядь?
Алло,
Здание профсоюзов подожгли.
знаем, сейчас будут машины.
Давайте там дети.
Какие дети?
Стоят дети внутри здания, блин! Да, дети и женщины там, внутри здания!
Алло.
Эти Майдауны их заперли там!
Well, and what were you telling me about the other fire trucks?
Which engines? As for the fire engines, the command was sent, well, over the radio. They ran there and told that the fire engines were coming and commanded to block the way and not to let them go.
Who gave the command?
Parubi did. Well, please, I am really nervous. They're beating him up. They're about to kill him because he's fighting back.
В Одессе командовал прямо он дал четкую команду.
He commanded in Odessa. He gave a clear command to come and break everything, to set fire and leave. He knew it from the start that people would run into the trade union house. He ordered to block that street, to jam and beat them up. It was initially intended to burn the tents, but when people ran into the house, his appetite was growing. I don't know. Firemen are coming, firemen are coming.
Not everyone was beating up wounded people. Somebody was trying to help. Now we're seeing Cesare in the trade union house after the tragedy. Listen, tell me one more time, what exactly did you hear him say?
Not to let anybody out. I mean, how much clearer could it be?
He said not to let them out?
Well, that's it. As I told you, Andrei Parubi was there 24 hours a day. I mean, what decisions he made and what kind of commands he gave, we will tell you after a while, when the war is over. We should give it some time. I can't say for sure that this case is over. It is coming on.
Do you mean Andrei was in charge?
He remains the guide for a major part of our patriotic world. He is a paradoxical figure. But I can identify him for myself. Now I consider his behavior intellectually disabled, actually the person who is not able to see casual links. What he is doing now, for example, according to the consequences. In the year 2014, 15, they kind of presented the appearance of power, communicated with the victims. We used to meet with families of people who died on Maidan, general prosecutors. When we put the problem forward, starting with the law which prevented us from the investigation, the response was next to nothing.
Activists fighting for New Ukraine and those who took part in events on Kulikovo field, as well as mass confrontations in the center of Odessa, were not charged for anything.
It's bad enough, first of all, because these cases are being investigated in 3 different departments. Well, sort of although the question had been raised with General Prosecutor's Office and more than once. However, there were no actions to investigate them together in joint trials. This affects the quality.
After the event in Odessa, instead of money, Cesare got a new offer.
Я нашел Мамулашвили опять.
I found Mamulashvili again and asked for my money. He answered that Poro didn't give any. I mean, Poroshenko did not give them to Saakashvili, so Saakashvili did not give to him. By the time, everything was clear. When I came there, I had already decided to leave. When I told him, he started to explain that there were Georgian legions created as military forces. He was going there to have everything under control, including salary and humanitarian assistance and other tales.
4 years passed, and other people started to speak in Ukraine. The Maidan shootings and the fact that people have been waiting for the investigation for 4 years mean that they're never going to be investigated. They don't let Gorbatyuk work. They bind him hand and foot. I personally gave my evidence to him that Lutsenko called for bringing the government down from the podium and promised to hand out weapons to people on Maidan. They don't give Gorbatyuk a chance to investigate these crimes. In my evidence, I was telling that I saw a blue car coming, a minibus. A few armed people got out of it. I named these people. They're in parliament now. Nadezhda Savchenko was honored as a hero of Ukraine. She was decorated for bravery. In 2014, she took part in hostilities in the southeast of the country as a member of voluntary battalion Aidar. She has been a deputy of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine since 2014. She's been in a Russian jail on charge of death of Russian journalists under Lugansk. She had been pardoned and returned to Ukraine. You have done nothing in this parliament during 4 years. The war you waged, dealing with your money, might come to your parliament. On March 22nd in 2018, the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine stripped Nadezhda Savchenko of her parliamentary immunity, concurring in prosecuting her. Now, a hero of Ukraine is on trial for preparation of a terrorist act of a House of Parliament in Kiev. On application by General Prosecutor of Ukraine Yuri Lutsenko, there's irrefutable evidence. Savchenko doesn't admit her guilt. Currently, she's in custody and has gone on hunger strike. Rada made its decision, and now it is up to you. That is all I can tell you. The next day after the arrest of Savchenko, national police were trying to seize the base of a Georgian National Legion, which was illegally located at the ATEC plant in Kiev. Legion commander Mamuka Mamulashvili seems to be aware of the event in Maidan. However, today Mamulashvili and his military people have support from the West. The authorities of Ukraine are doing their best to get rid of one more disobedient witness, but it's out of their league. According to official data, 50 people died in the trade union house on the 2nd of May in Odessa. There are more than hundreds of victims in Maidan who were wounded or died there. Here, they are called the Heavenly 100.
I am telling you what happened. And you just imagine, wonder why I have to tell you this. Do I need to tell on myself? Why? Am I an idiot or something? I do it to save myself. And those guys were there too and decided to tell everything as well. I said in the end, whatever happens, it's Saakashvili and Mamulashvili's guilt. Whatever happens to me and those guys who agreed to give interviews. Of course, I'm afraid for my life. You know what? When you are looking death in the eye is one thing, but when somebody might sneak up on you from behind and shoot you in the back, it's a completely different thing. I would rather they shot looking in the eye than sneaking up on me from behind.
Those shadow participants of Maidan events who took power at the cost of organizing the murder of their own people committed their crimes in full public view. Nowadays, they sit at the highest levels of government, and the witnesses of those crimes continue to die. This story is far from over. After the first part of our investigation had come out, our colleagues who are citizens of Ukraine were interrogated. Several complaints were filed against them for the assistance to the enemies of the country. This way is unlikely to lead Ukraine to Europe.